The pasuk says, "Va'asu li mikdash v'shachanti b'soicham." Hashem says, "You should make for me a mikdash, and I will dwell amongst them." Rashi says, "Va'asu li mikdash, va'asu lishmi." You should make for my sake beis kedusha, a holy house. Mefarshim explained that Rashi is coming to explain these two words, that li means for my sake, lishmi, and mikdash means a holy house. The question, however, says that if that's the case, why do these two things say in the same Dibra Maschel within the same Rashi? Rashi should have divided it, said Li means Lishmi and Mikdash means Beis Kedusha. Also, why is Rashi quoting the word Va'asu? Va'asu li Mikdash. Furthermore, he even repeats it in his Pirush, Va'asu Lishmi. Seemingly, he's not telling us anything new about the meaning of the word V'asu. Now that Rebbe turns more specifically to the wording of Rashi. Rashi says Li means Lishmi, for my sake, and we need to understand. The Gemara has a different explanation for Li. Li means Hashem is saying you should Va'asu li Mikdash, make the Mikdash from that which is mine. That means we're going to pay the workers of the Beis HaMikdash from Mammon Hektish, from the money of Hashem. In fact, we find that Rashi himself uses this translation for Li elsewhere, earlier on in Chumash. So why does Rashi have to take the word Li out of a more simple meaning and say it means Lishmi, for my sake? The Rebbe says seemingly would be able to explain it, because a few psukim earlier in the very beginning of the parsha, the pasuk says V'yikchu li Terumah, take Terumah for me, and there it definitely cannot mean Li means Hashem, that Hashem is saying you should take that which is mine, my money, because the whole point of V'yikchu li Terumah is the Yidden should donate from their money to Hashem. So Rashi says over there that it means Lishmi, for my sake. And since this pasuk that we're now speaking about, V'asu li Mikdash, is coming directly in continuation to V'yikchu li Terumah, it makes sense that it has a similar meaning. But the Rebbe says the truth of the matter is the other way around, on the contrary. In V'yikchu li Terumah, when the money needs to go from the possession of the ordinary person and become holy, it's understood that we want him not only to do the action of giving the money, but we want his intention as well. In his mind, he should be giving it over to Hashem. But after it's already holy, why now do we need another V'asu li Lishmi, that when he's going to make it, the Beis HaMikdash, the Mishkan, it needs to be done Lishmi? In other words, specifically because we translated V'yikchu li Terumah that it's already going to Hashem, it makes more sense to say that Li over here should mean something else. Another thing that Rebbe says we need to understand is in the next part of the Rashi, where we said that Rashi says that Mikdash means a Beis Kedusha, a holy house. What is Rashi trying to tell us with this? What is this Chiddush over here? The Mizrahi, one of the commentators on Rashi, says that Rashi wants to tell us the pasuk doesn't say a house, so it can be any holy item. So Rashi is saying that no, it's a holy house. But the Rebbe is saying seemingly this needs a lot of clarification, because earlier on in the Shira, in Parashat B'Shalach, we had already this word, Mikdash, Hashem, Koinenu Yodecha. Rashi didn't explain anything over there. That means a holy house, because it's obvious. Mikdash is the Beis HaMikdash. Another thing, says the Rebbe, we need to understand, why does Rashi actually use the term Beis Kedusha, a holy house? Why not Beis HaMikdash? Says the Rebbe, the explanation of all of this is, what was mainly bothering Rashi is the words V'asu li Mikdash. Why are we calling it Mikdash when we're speaking about the Mishkan? Now, the Oira Chaim explains that V'asu li Mikdash is really a command for everything. The time when they're in the Midbar for the Mishkan, the future time when they're going to have the Beis HaMikdash. But from the Rashis in the next psukim, it's quite obvious that Rashi holds that V'asu li Mikdash is specifically referring to the Mishkan. So we're back to the question, why does it say V'asu li Mikdash, and we're speaking about the Mishkan? It's in order to answer this question, Rashi says that the Mikdash means, it does not mean the Beis HaMikdash. Mikdash means make for me a holy house. Mikdash is an abbreviated form of Beis HaMikdash. Mikdash means a holy house. Now that could be said about the Mishkan as well. The Mishkan is a holy house. But the question then will be, why would the Pasuk use the term Mikdash rather than the more common expression Mishkan, which is being used all over Chumash? And this is why Rashi starts off by saying V'asu li means V'asu lishmi, make it for my sake. That you need to have a special kavanah when you're making the Mishkan, that it should be for my sake. And in order to explain what's the significance of this V'asu lishmi, that's why the pasuk uses the expression that it should be V'asu li Mikdash. What does this mean? So the Rebbe says, as mentioned before, we have a question. Seemingly, if the money was separated already and done already, l'shmi for Hashem, v'yikhuli truma, why do we need another kavanah when making the Mishkan? That it should be for Hashem's sake. That's why the pasuk says, because v'asuli mikdash, which according to Rashi means you should make me a holy house. In other words, there needs to be a special kavanah in the making of the house that this should be, to add this special kedusha to this house, to this Mishkan that we're making. In other words, because we're not only going to have a house over here or a Mishkan with some holy items in it, but the very house itself is going to be holy. The Rebbe says, really these words should be read in Rashi as bayis kedosha, a holy house. In other words, there's a major change happening within the items that were donated for the Mishkan when they are now being made into the Mishkan. In other words, earlier on when it was separated from their money and made into money for Hekdesh, that means right now they belong to Hekdesh. So that's one stage. The Asuli Mikdash is coming to tell us a whole new thing. That now all of these items themselves are becoming holy, they're becoming part of this holy house. And that's why you need to have this special kavanah that it should be Lishmi. So again, in summary, what Rashi is saying is, the Asuli Mikdash, that it should be made for my sake. Why do you need to make it for my sake? Because you're trying to achieve that it should be a holy house, a bayis kedosha. Says the Rebbe, based on this we can understand another thing in Rashi. The word Terumah, v'yikhuli Terumah, could actually be explained in two ways. Targum explains Terumah as separation, which is the way Rashi explains it. But Terumah could also be uplifting, harama, lifting up. Why does Rashi explain it as hafrosha, as separation? So let's first understand the difference between separation and lifting up. Separation means it was only separated from other things, but in essence it basically remained the same thing. Harama means it was completely elevated to a new essence. It's completely transformed to a much higher level. According to Rashi, this is the difference between these two, v'yikhuli truma and v'asuli mikdash. First you have v'yikhuli truma. That's the donations for the Mishkan. This was only that Eden separated from their money. It now went over from their possession and now it became holy. It became Hashem's possession. But in essence, again, it didn't change. It just moved possessions. The Asuli Mikdash is that now we're taking these donations and we're making them, as we said before, a bayis kedosha, a holy house. They're now becoming part of the Mishkan, part of this Mikdash. They're uplifted. In other words, now it comes to the stage of being uplifted. Originally, again, Terumah is hafrosha, but once it becomes a Beis HaMikdash or a Mikdash, now it's elevated to mamish become holy itself. And the Rebbe concludes with the Hoira. We know it says, "V'asuli Mikdash shachanti b'soicham." That Hashem says, "Make for me a Mikdash, and I will dwell amongst them." It doesn't say amongst it, but I'll dwell in it, but rather amongst them, inside of each and every Yid, not only in the physical Mishkan, and not only in the physical Mikdash. So we have the Hoira, how it applies to us as well. That there's two stages. Number one, a Yid needs to make sure that his own house is different. It's separated, hafrasha, from everything around him. And that is that even though he's involved in Gashmi, things, but it's in a totally different way. Because it's done, Kol Ma'asecha Yu L'Shem Shamayim, it's all done for the sake of Hashem. That means even though they are still your actions, your deeds, they're still mundane things, but they're being done in a different way. Hafrasha, L'Shem Shamayim. But the ultimate goal is V'asuli Migdash, you lift it up. You're transforming them into something holy, that are no longer mundane things. Rather, Bayis Kadosh, it's a holy house, that every detail of the house is permeated with and is felt inside of it. The mitzvahs that you're doing with these things. And the Rebbe concludes that by making out of our own personal house a Migdash for Hashem, this is of course going to bring immediately the building of the third Beis HaMikdash, the Beis HaMikdash that Hashem himself makes, b'meheir v'yameinu mamash.